This is the eLearning Podcast, episode number 69.
I think a learning cohort is a very thoughtful exercise of choosing who is going to be part of a learning experience. Like putting real effort into choosing in a case by case, almost who should be part of a learning experience and why this group should be taking this approach.
Welcome to the eLearning Podcast. My name's Ladek, and I'm your host from lmspulse.com. For our final episode of 2021, my guest is Diego Lainez, the founder of Dare to Learn in Monterey, Mexico. Diego's answer to one simple question may be the perfect lever that you need to kickstart your e-learning right in 2022. The question is, what learning do you want to achieve? Now, Diego believes the best way to tackle this potentially overwhelming question is through cohorts. Diego helps organizations and teams develop powerful teamwork capabilities where competencies become the compass that will help you navigate upskilling journeys without losing your north. In this competitive conversation, Diego and I talk about competencies, of course, with a bit of a crash course on what they are and how they should influence your learning, teamwork, and strategy. We also talk about natural working teams and why competencies can be a common language for all the people you'll be working with. And yes, that may include customers and students. We also talk about how it's perfectly possible to align teams and learning goals, or even apply personalized approaches simultaneously to not only protect collaboration, but also bolster it. We also talk about why roles like instructional design and L&D officer have shifted to focus on team goals and why are called to continue changing towards agility, cognitive awareness, and impact. And then finally, we talk about why ultimately the real focus on learning is the people, not the tech or the learning plan. So when it comes to competency-based experiences, flexibility is your best friend. But before we get started, a quick word from our sponsors.
The eLearning Podcast is sponsored by the eLearning Success Summit. Learn from more than 40 experts how to teach, work, and learn online without being overwhelmed. Get your free ticket to the summit at elearningsuccesssummit.com. And lmspulse.com, your best source for news, information, and resources for e-learning professionals for more than 10 years. Get our free roundup of the week's top news at lmspulse.com.
Hello, Diego. Welcome to the eLearning Podcast. How are you today?
I'm great, Stephen. Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
My pleasure. Diego, where do we find you sitting today?
I'm sitting in Monterey, Mexico. Monterey, Nuevo León, Mexico, in the north part of the country.
Monterey. I'm sitting in Ciudad de Mexico. So we're, a 2-hour flight from each other? Something like that?
1 hour flight. It's
a 1 hour flight. I haven't
been
to
almost neighbors.
My wife was there recently, but I have not gone yet. Fantastic. I can't tell you how excited I am for this conversation. Before we go further, why don't you take, 30 seconds and tell us, who you are, tell us about the company that you represent and, sort of give us who you are in your own words.
Yes, I'm learning passionate. So I think we have that in common. And I've been in the learning industry for 12 years now. And I am the founder of a company, a consultancy firm called Dare to Learn. And I think what we want to do, what we want to do is we want to give people the tools to learn effectively for the work and to actually break some paradigms about what learning means, to actually make it useful for everyone out there trying to keep up with disruption. Let's say that's in a nutshell.
Nice. Excellent. And final question before we get started, Diego, I've been using the podcast as a time capsule for the COVID situation around the world. And so I've been asking each of my guests to give me just, we're recording this in the middle of October in 2021. What's the COVID situation in Monterey? Is it business as usual? Is it lockdown? Like what's it like? What's the day-to-day life?
Interesting. I think Monterey has been one of the hardest cities, let's say on the rigid part. It's one of the where the mayor and the governor has been very strict about the lights. We have like green light, yellow light, red light. Mm-hmm. So I think Monterey has been quite regulated place, more than other places in the country. Since I talk about with people around Mexico. And so I think we are still kind of in a lockdown here. Not, of course, much more flexible than the last year, but still schools are reopening just last week, for example. This is just happening here. It happened very earlier in the rest of Mexico, even 1 hour from here where my parents live. The schools, and my brother has their kids are in the school for quite a while. So we are just reopening, and restaurants are just reopening in real capacity. So it's been a strict city, let's say. And for me, it's okay. I was very strict myself. Me and my family, we were, as far as I know, one of the most lockdown families, at least in my near circle. So I think it was okay what we had to do, but that's the situation right now.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. I'm interested to hear that schools did not open until recently for you. I mean, I have three kids. Everybody on the podcast knows that, or everybody listening right now. And we were really, really excited that schools opened, in August for our children to start as well. So I as another parent, I commiserate with you. It's just keeping them out of school is tough. It's a tough one.
Yes.
Even though this is the eLearning podcast, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I had 3 kids myself, three beautiful girls, and yes, it's challenging. And you hear everyone already sending them to school, and you're asking why, and it's the school says it's the government says the school. So it is. We are learning as we on the fly.
It's true. It's true that Diego, you and I, as we kind of put together this episode, the topic that came up that I thought was really interesting was learning cohorts. And I wanted to just put that on the table for you to talk about today. I know you've been experimenting with them and thinking about them. Give us your definition of what is a learning cohort? Why is that? And what does that differ from other pathways or other ways that people are performing online learning these days?
Great. Yeah, I think a learning cohort is the very thoughtful exercise of choosing who is going to be part of a learning experience. Like putting real effort into choosing in a case by case, almost who should be part of a learning experience, and why this group should be taking this approach to learning. This group should be taking this approach to learning. When should these groups should be mixed up? When they should be on a different pathway, as you mentioned. And even when it's a cohort of 1, it's good enough. When it's another way. It's a play of words, but a cohort of 1 is this. You don't need a group to actually learn this. You should be your own path, your own work alone, and giving this thoughtful time and effort to actually plan that it's not everything for everyone, and even leaving people aside when it's not their right time to take a learning experience. It's something that you sometimes don't want to do as a learning and development head, because it has some political cost, or it goes against we need to give everyone everything, with the Big Bang approach, let's say. So it's been quite a while challenging thing to do. In pandemic, it was also challenging. I think it was even more challenging because you wanted to go with, now that you have the Zooms and the Teams, you want everyone for everyone. I mean,
right, sure.
What's the cost of people joining if they can join? You don't have another flight to buy or another meal to provide in the hotel. So, but that it also goes. It actually sometimes goes against what you wanted to achieve in the cohort. If you want everyone joining, it doesn't. It's not as good as you think it is, because I think you're going for the wrong KPI about talking everything for everyone. So I think that's the cohort mindset. The bias for a good cohort should be given enough thought and enough fragmentation of a group, of a company, of a department, to actually choose who should be part of what. That will be when I talk about cohort-based training, is I'm going to start almost with that.
Sure.
Of course, what we want to do, but then who should be part of it?
And so
that's
so how do we, so for most people, they'll say, hey, look, this is just like normal school, right? Like, as we go through school as, young people, it's first grade, second grade, third grade, it's in college, it's freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. And so they're like, seems like a return back to sort of normal schooling. When the promise of online learning is personalization and individualization. What are some of the real powerful arguments to putting a specific group together? Like, what are the things that you get out of it that you wouldn't get it from an individualized path?
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I think, that's what I was thinking when I say cohort of one. I think you need to give people the chance to think about their career development or their learning plan as a path of one, a learning path of one, and you need to be okay with people deciding to be part of, to join a specific training or to read a specific book that they see that it's going to make a difference for them, and you don't need to make a big deal of that. I mean, that's giving people the chance to decide for themselves on an individual level what they want to achieve. And now we have all these tools, from LinkedIn Learning to EDX to all these kind of open platforms that people can choose. And probably everything they need from you is the time to allocate some time for them to learn on themselves, and money, sometimes money, like
sure,
give them the money to buy the license or something like that. But then there are some experiences, and I think you hit a nail. An important thing here is that what we understand as cohort is that first grade, second grade, third grade, and it's divided by age.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually the filter is age,
sure,
which is not the case that you should take into account when talking about corporate learning. From my point of view,
of course, that would be really difficult.
Exactly, that would be really difficult. But it's also, then again, the second filter, the next best thing, which I think is not as good as we think it is the org chart, right? Analysts, juniors, seniors. I mean, it's in the end, maybe, of course, you have different ages. You can have an analyst that is 45, and also an analyst in the first row of the org chart who is 25, right? Or you can have a VP at 30 and also a 60. But I think it's also not the right approach to make an horizontal cut on the org chart, because you are missing things, right? For me, something I learned when I was in CEMEX, it was the big amount of time that we took. We worked a lot with Deloitte on that moment when we were creating CEMEX University. We dedicate a lot of time, a lot of meetings to actually take the pyramid and actually see, okay, this person from here, to actually craft the group from different places of the org chart. And the filters were, what does these people need? That was one way, what do these people need? What are the gaps in their understanding? What kind of projects they are in, to see what we can offer to this cohort of people, right? That was one way of approaching it. And it was harder, of course, than just taking the easier approach, but it was really more transcendent, because those people were in need of the same things. And also what we used to do there, we also took some other people in the org chart or in the pyramid that they knew better. They were already a step or two ahead, and so we want to invite them as ambassadors. We know we knew that these people were experts or subject matter experts, but they were open to share, and also they knew they will learn from the non-experts, right? So this kind of craft, it takes time. It's not easier, and you need to find out the logistics of doing. Well, the other thing that we normally do in companies is everyone in Mexico, everyone in the US, because it's easier, right? So it's more logistics, but it's more important, or you get better results. And the other thing that I think it also works, and we underestimate a lot, is natural working teams,
Mm.
right? So if you want to, the other side of this coin that I said, like to choosing one by one, is that sometimes when you don't take into account the natural teams they're going to be working with, or the internal customers or the internal departments in these cross departments teams, is that they will come back from this experience talking a language that will not be easy to share if they were alone in that cohort. You take this one person that comes back and the other 20 persons in their team, they don't know what he's talking about.
Sure.
We have seen this a lot. So you need to also try to craft a strategy to have a natural team together sharing the same language, which isn't easy.
No.
Imagine sometimes someone in the team doesn't speak English. What are you gonna do about it? Someone in the team, it's very young, and the other half of the team has an MBA or a master's degree, and the other doesn't. So what are you gonna do about it? That's the work. Sometimes it's like, so what? So the L&D team is what? So if I do that, then how can I do my work? No, that's the work. You need to understand that that's actually the work. If it's not a struggle, then what are you doing, right? So I have learned that, and just to make one more kind of segmentation that you can take into account, two of them. And with this I close, and I'll let you go forward with the questions. But this, who wants to learn and who doesn't? What I was telling you about the chance, the moment in your life, right? It's something we don't ask. You go ahead and you say, okay, you are being invited. You really want to learn. Are you in a moment in your life that you want to take this opportunity? Will this be a burden, or will this be an opportunity for you? And to ask the question. There's nothing more frustrating, I think, for someone to be invited to something he doesn't want to go. He or she doesn't want to go. And okay, sometimes you have to pay the price to play the game. Okay. But maybe if you can stretch that out and maybe give this person a couple of months and then ask him to join in the next cohort, it will be a complete difference for this person. Mm-hmm. If he wants versus if he feels it's an imposition. So that's another way to mix your cohort. And the ultimate risk that I have taken, and it has worked so far, is that, okay, now that you have people, you will have, take this as a real example. So we launched a corporate sales program, a new B2B sales program in the company in Scandia, where I'm part of also. And we send the first pre-work, right? So we send the pre-work to the cohort. We did our best job to have a nice cohort. So we send the pre-work. They get into the Zoom meeting, and we raise a survey. Do you feel that you need more time to review the material? Or are you ready to move forward with the material? And we have 50-50.
Oh.
So, yeah, and these people, they said they were in a nice place to take the training course. It looks like they have the time, and they see the importance of it. They wanted to. But even if they wanted to, life goes the middle, right? So they get into the session, a 3-hour session, say, okay, do you feel like you need this, or do you feel like this? And with the survey, we made 2 different pathways in the same session. So we said, okay, if you are the ones that need to actually go ahead through the material or whatever, so you're going to have this kind of session. And we are respecting that you did the work. You're going to have this kind of session. And it's something that you create some, in conformity in the ones that were invited to this session where we have a guest speaker. But now it's okay. Don't worry. You're going to learn also. We're going to get together in an hour, but this first hour is going to be different. Mm-hmm. You are making a cohort there, and you are taking your chances of people getting offended or, whatever. It's okay. You are here. We want you to learn, but these people are ready. You are not there yet. Let's do something about it, and then we get together again.
Sure.
So that's been kind of the experiments I've been doing in the last couple of years.
I love it. No, I mean, I love the super complete answer there. That was actually unexpectedly fantastic, because the piece that I drew out of your answer was the mental shift from what I hear so often in the e-learning, online learning context, where it's, how do I design the material? How do I design the experience, the engagement, the whatever, that piece of it. Whereas this moves it from a mindset of, how am I, my real focus is on the people, right? It's on that cohort, and your job, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what you're saying, you're saying like the real big job of the learning manager, the teacher, the whatever, is shepherding those individuals together, and um, making sure that they stay on that same plane, or making sure that the conversation moves. Like, it's really more of a facilitation role than a design and delivery role. Do I have that right?
Yes, and I think that the design and delivery role are tickets to ride more often than before. I mean, you need to have a great design. I mean, I'm an instructional designer. I started being an instructional designer when I didn't even know that exists 12 years ago.
I think many people did. I think that's very
Yeah,
common.
yeah.
That's a very common answer. It's like, oh, I've been doing that for 10 years now. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And in the US, people have like instructional designer certifications and whatever. In Mexico, it's non-existent. So I start to do it like a very
Note for everybody listening: there's a business opportunity.
yeah. There's business opportunity.
Instructional design certification.
Exactly. HR, ATD, and all those guys. Please come and do something about it, because we don't have that. And it's you. Once you get into this world, it's. I'm not saying it's easy to become an instructional designer, but it's not rocket science if you actually follow some methodology, and then it's great, because I tell myself, and I'm pretty sure you are also, we are artists. We are creating stuff. So it's so rewarding to have this kind of job. But yeah, it has to be a good experience. You need to know about UX and behavior of psychological behavior, why people will work on this, will not work on this, the learning loop, all that's okay. But for me, one of the biggest realizations of this low-hanging fruit that gives a lot of results is, you cannot forget your audience and how to make. This is why I think the best universities are very hard to join, right? It's very different to join a group. You and me probably have been in, I don't know, trainings or conferences where everyone is allowed to be there, and you are running and people are just crawling, and if the questions are also from people that are in the crawling section, you will feel disappointed, because you feel like they are asking Google questions for you, right? I mean, you can Google that. Let's ask something, but that's not their fault. They were invited. There was access for everyone. So yes, it's an MC work and then facilitation work, but it starts like trying to solve the problem upstream. Upstream is where the problem maybe begins. Spend time there. I mean, this is design thinking 101. I mean, spend time in the problem, and then the solution will be more easy. But we want to run. We always want go for more people, more hours, and more courses, right? So I think there's something to learn there about finding the right problem to solve. And part of it is how do you design the group and how do you shepherd the group. I love that term.
Yeah, and that's you've really put, again, another really powerful description of, and we're starting kind of mixing two topics here, like the sort of the design principles with the cohort choice, in that it's not what am I trying to say? It's not mutually exclusive. Like, you can still have those broad-based courses. You still have those compliance courses that everybody has to take. You still have those, hey, here's the introduction, those onboarding, processes that everybody has to go through. But then when we're talking about a crack, maybe it's like a crack engineering team, or maybe this is a new leadership development team, or maybe this is, and you're handpicking and curating the individuals that are a part of that group. Then, like, I really love what you just said right there, where it's just like, you kind of want to be as exclusive as you can be,
Yes.
because you want to find people that are not only at the same level, but also people who can come in and contribute, and you know how you're going to walk them through or where they're at to get them where you need them to be, or to set them loose, really. At the end of the day, it's, we're
Yeah, definitely.
as a company, you're saying, look, we're selecting you, and this is a little special badge. So use this opportunity to really advance.
Definitely. I mean, I'm totally agree. It's not an or situation, this or this, is an and situation, right? And this and this. I mean, you cannot get rid of everything. I'm not saying that, but we need to be honest with ourselves, and the Pareto Principle applies everywhere. I mean, you have 20% of the people that actually want to learn, and you put your bets on them, and hoping they will move 80% of your learning culture, your development as a company, and that's okay. And that 20% is not always the same person. Sometimes it has to be with the moment they are living, the challenges they have in front of them. If they are saturated, if they are in the most challenging project they have, and you also invite them to a training course that is going to be time consuming, you are preparing them for burnout, right? So and you need to know these things. We love databases, and especially, I'm telling the CEMEX story because there were, 18,000 administrative employees, right? So
18,000 administrators. I knew it was
we have 48,000
wow,
around the world, but you have a lot of people in the lines, etc. But you have 18,000. So this wasn't exclusive for, you can do that in a startup. No. I mean, of course it's harder. Of course you need to, but that's the job. You need to spend a lot of time doing the kind of work that makes a cohort or a group or an experience remarkable, instead of going with, we have 10 pesos and we have 10 programs, 1 peso for everyone, and that's it. That's the easier way, right? And that's why sometimes people don't trust L&D areas, because it looks like you are doing a mathematical approach to something that has to be a little bit more than that. So those are my thoughts, and I think choice. I don't know. It's so as important as everything else that you're trying to build, right? So it's where you meet in the middle with the person. So it's a two-way street on this case.
So we did not discuss this in the green room before we started recording this, but you've brought me to a place that I need to ask this question now, as someone who's worked for CEMEX, as someone who's working in a large corporation right now. Like, how has the role of the learning and development coordinator, or the head of talent, I think a lot of people are calling it people or talent these days, how is that role evolving, or has evolved over the last 2 years, like in terms of conversations with leadership and conversations with what you're designing, and how, like, let me put it there, and you run with that. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great
Especially
question.
I would love to hear from the Latin American perspective, like for Mexico and Central and South America. Like, I would love to hear how that might be different than other parts of the world.
That's great. And I can speak for the Mexican Latin America part. I think I have seen a lot, and a lot of the things that I love happening around the world are in the US, in Europe, some great examples in Mexico, but it's harder. A lot of the things I love to read, I had the chance to interview also Heather McGowan, which is like with a great example of someone thinking that L&D is going to disappear. So I love that, it's going to disappear as we know it, right? So she wrote this book, The Adaptation Advantage, and she said something like, replying to your question, like, we need to let go about what we think it's our job as learning functions on telling you what to learn, where to learn it, when to learn it, how to learn it. You need to let go of that, because that is us, of course, it gives us power, status, and it looks like I love this phrase, like, it's very hard to convince someone that something isn't working anymore, especially if that something is what fit fit them, right? Especially if that's something has been successful in the past and their job depends on not changing that. So a lot of my colleagues in learning or in talent or in university deans of corporate university deans, they don't like it when I said, well, the best job you can do is try to disappear as a function. Like,
wow.
imagine this. Yeah, I mean, of course they don't like it, but and then I contextualize and we laugh together because it's if you teach everyone to be an agile learner and to own themselves, their path of learning, of course this is easier said than done because what you need to do as a function, from my point of view, and I think this in the past 2 years, it's been a little bit, I don't know if clearer or I don't know, maybe it's even more confusing than before, because I think two things have happened. Executives and the C-level is paying attention to learning strategy more than ever, to HR in general, right? So it says you see people like, well, what kind of training we can give them now that they are everyone is in their places, and so the digital transformation became real for a lot of us in the past 2 years. So yeah, it was like this Peter and the wolf tale, right? The wolf is coming. The wolf is coming. Well, the wolf actually came, and we need to do something about it, right? So I feel like that the execs are taking a look at talent management, HR in general, learning. So we are in the spotlight. So that's great. So we have the chance to actually be up to the challenge. And the thing is happening, I think myself, what I hope is happening is we are realizing that telling everyone when, how, where, it's unsustainable and it's actually not working, right? We wanted to, but it's not working. So you need to teach people to learn by themselves. I talked to you about the learning tactics that nobody teaches us, right? So nobody teaches us how to curate information, how to tap into learning communities to extract some knowledge. Nobody teaches you how to learn, how to take notes, how to use your memory palace, how to use the interleaving, how to use the deliberate practice to learn stuff. Nobody teaches you that. What you understand as learning is what you understand as education. You know, same cohorts, 9 to 1, et cetera, et cetera. So we understand that still, and we as learning, we need to unlearn ourselves.
Sure.
Tell people like, I'm sorry, I am part of the problem. I was part of the problem. I don't want to be part of the problem anymore. We need to understand a new way of learning. Here are the techniques. You know, it's a craft, it's a skill. So once you learn it, you are in the meta learning process that you can now learn whatever you want. And not to presume anymore that we know what people need. That's very presumptuous. I mean, people know what they need.
I've heard a lot of people describe this as learning in the flow of work, learning in the moment. You know, is that what you're describing right now?
Not really, because
okay.
I think sometimes I have read a lot about it. I love it. I mean, I love the Josh Bersing learning in the world the flow of work. I mean, I love that. But I think, as with other concepts, Stephen, like growth mindset and grit, but I think sometimes in how they become famous, they are also not helping a lot in a sense, because they become famous and we oversimplify it and we are not really teaching people to do it.
Okay.
That's the difference when you say learning in the flow of work. You can explain it, but people don't know how to use it. You are explaining the concept. It's like growth mindset. I can tell you what a growth mindset is, but until I put you some challenges and I teach you how to recognize a fixed mindset on your everyday work, that's a skill. And the skill is not, you do not learn skill in a 1-hour webinar. This is kind of the L&D things that we are, as I said, we are part of the problem because we're telling people that 1-hour webinar, it's training, which is not. So this is what's been happening in the past 2 years. We forgot completely that we used to have trainings that took 40 hours because that's the time you practice, you get feedback, you practice, you get feedback. And now we have 1-hour webinars telling that's training. So we need to be careful about that.
For sure.
It's the same that happened with eLearning at the end of the 90s, right? Everything is eLearning. Now we don't need to get together. We need to be careful with that. I think that's happening. So from my point of view, what we aren't teaching, we are talking about learning in the flow of work, growth mindset, self-learning. But to be honest, if you ask a junior or a senior sales rep, do you understand what learning in the flow of work is after a keynote? And you know how to use it? They won't know how to use it. They don't know the technique. They don't know the skill. And so I think that's part of what the learning and development role should be. You need to reteach what learning is. And you need to understand that when you teach that, you almost are useless for the rest, for a while, for those persons. Because now it's like they are coming of age, so they can go ahead and do whatever they want.
I think that's kind of the beauty of it, though, right? Like if I'm just to really simplify it, it's you develop maybe the playbook that you would, like for that sales rep. Let's just use that example, right? So here I, you have your sort of junior sales reps, and you're like, look, you need to be able to upskill yourself as rapidly as possible because changes are happening so fast. And here's the techniques we use here in whatever it is, Cemex or whatever company. And you give them that playbook, and then your job is to make sure that playbook is working, it's functioning, that they
embrace it.
That they own it, right? And then you step back. But then again, I think it comes right back to the beginning of the conversation where you're saying where it's now your job is the coach. Now your job is the monitor of what's going on. And I guess you could even get scientific about it. I guess this is where you kind of nicely took me right where I wanted to go, is if we're working ourselves out of that position, right? If as learning and development professionals or managers or owners of this discipline, what are we measuring? Like, what are we, because, the C-suite is going to say, we've got these KPIs, or they're going to say, look, show me, some data, show me some results. Like,
show me the money.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how is it that, putting this learning in the flow of work playbook together? Like, how have you answered that question?
Yep. That's a great question. And honestly, it's a very hard one to answer because sometimes I feel I need to construct very, very from the beginning or from scratch. And I just to point out that's why I just closed my previous idea. That's why people misunderstand when I said we need to disappear, because if you do that, they won't need you anymore, but then you do your work. And now your work is to coach, to talk to other leaders in the organization, to let people learn, to give them time to learn, think. I mean, you need to protect what you already achieved. Now it's a protection role. And you need to put money, you need to put the time and effort and resources. You need to put them, going back to cohort, you need to let them know they love the same things. There's another guy that wants to learn that, and you need to make a cohort that makes sense. That is a great new role for L&D. And we are running away from counting hours and counting heads, right? Now, to your question, I have had a mix of answers, experimenting with honest answers, but I think it depends also who is asking, and we're talking about the audience. Where is this question coming from? From which part of the business, of the heart of the business, the mind of the business, the money in the business? So you need to be being an L&D with business sense can help you out how to answer this question. Because if the question is asked in a forum when we're talking about the culture of the company, you're talking about this is the right thing to do. We care about people. And sometimes I have here this book with Margaret Heffernan about Beyond Measure, which I love. It says sometimes the things we measure don't need to be measured, and sometimes the things we don't measure are the ones that have actual impact, right? So not everything has to be measured to the bottom line of the P&L, which is not a good answer for the CFO, but it's a good answer for a forum where we were talking about culture. And you need to believe this. You need to be in a company where people believe that it's the right thing to do, prepare people for the future. And also it makes business sense, because if you don't prepare them, this is the classic, right? What about if you prepare them and they leave? What about if you don't prepare them and they stay, right? So you can take those kind of answers, and if you believe them, that's more than enough. I mean, it's the right thing to do. We care about our people. We're going to do the best for them to develop. And we understand without the numbers, we understand this makes business sense because someone that is prepared is engaged and someone that is engaged is productive. And I can quote 10 or 20 studies from around the world, from Adam Grant to Ray Dalio about this. Okay. Mm-hmm. Do you need something else? Because that will be something that you can put into, of course, you need to do your work. You need to have this kind of answer ready to put together. But also, when you talk about when you are in a CFO meeting, of course, you need to talk about, okay, how much money are you putting into training and which is the ROI? And now here comes the data part. Now you can say, okay, if you do what I said you shouldn't do, to have 10 pesos and I put 1 peso here, 1 peso here, 1 peso here, 1 peso, and everyone is happy. Okay. And what is happening? If you have the courage to say, okay, I'm going to take 9 pesos and I'm going to put it in this small bucket because from what I heard in the business plan for next year, this is what we want to do, right?
Right.
But then everyone is good. Nobody's going to have training this year. Okay, so you want to be sexy or you want to be rich? You cannot be both, right? So, and this takes courage. This is the kind of conversations that when you get involved in the business, you can answer that without without the fear of being criticized because you're talking their language. So this is what I have done. I have a budget, and the first thing I run out of is how can we give something to everyone? There are years where no one is going to receive. What I can do, what is my how to say this, what it's always on the offer every time you want is the learning how to learn offer. This I have for you. I mean, if you are hungry, you want to grow, I will give you the pathway and you can go your way. But this time we're talking about digital, we're talking about insights. Put your money where your mouth is, and that will be, because then with that money you can also have that data. You can also take the data and make correlations, and there are softwares that do this. But if you don't have the money, of course you won't be able to do that. You need to have the resources, the people, the attention into something, and there are ways to make correlations. I mean, you can have your best performers and see if there's a correlation with what they are coming to this training or not, etc. It's harder. Again, what we have done in Scandia, for example, we have tried to in sales to correlate the best salespersons with how often they are in our training sessions, and we have found correlations. We are not saying it's a causation, but it's a correlation, and that's sometimes more than enough. Like, okay, you have, and you can see when people are in the low performance part of the pyramid and they are not coming to the training, there's a correlation too. Mm-hmm. These kind of answers, it has taken me 10 years to learn it the hard way. So I think it's something you can do faster.
Fantastic. Diego, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really wish that we were in the same city, because I think that we would go have
for a drink
right now.
Yeah.
Actually, we would go have a mezcal.
Yeah, I don't know if to celebrate or to cry, but yes, both.
But I can't thank you enough for this conversation today. We will continue it again on another episode or some other place. But I wish you all the best with Dare to Learn. And I look forward to hearing your opinions and whatnot out there in the e-learning universe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stefan. Thanks for inviting me out. It was great. See you soon, here or there.
Thanks again for tuning into today's episode of the eLearning Podcast. If you like what you heard, please do me the favor of following us on LinkedIn, Twitter, or whichever social media you prefer. Also, if you're interested in diving deeper on e-learning, I encourage you to get your free ticket to the eLearning Success Summit, where there are more than 70 hours of presentations on best practices. Just go to elearningsuccesssummit.com. And then finally, for the latest news, information, and resources about e-learning, come subscribe to our newsletter at lmspulse.com. Thanks.